My office smells like glue.
That's unfortunate.
I have been in hobby overdrive because we have a lot of Warhammer games coming up, and I said that I was going to have 6,000 points of Space Marines, and I don't have that much built yet.
Dude, I'm still trying to get paint on models. Like, I got a little bit of paint down on my Gaz model today while I was, like, waiting for some things, and that was about it. So, yeah, I feel it.
Which totally brings us into our current topic today. Today we are going to be talking about the Warhammer Balanced Data Slate. Welcome to Talk About Tatooine. I'm Andrew.
I'm Nathan.
And we are twin brothers here to bring you what's new in nerddom, give colorful commentary on our favorite subjects. I screwed up the intro. Welcome to our cantina. Grab a drink and settle in as we set course for realities beyond our own.
All right, welcome everybody to episode 43. Today's recording date is September 15th, and this episode is going to be released on Monday, September 18th, which is a special day. That is our birthday. Very excited.
Yes.
So today we're going to be discussing, as Andrew said, the Warhammer Balanced Data Slate, but we're going to start off with our starter questions. Today is going to be a Warhammer heavy episode. Let's get right into it. Andrew, what's our opening question for today?
Tell us about some of the Warhammer games that we have coming up.
All right, so since we both have two games coming up, I'm going to tell you about one of them, and I'll leave the big one for you. So,
ooh, baby.
We have a game coming up actually between me and you. It's going to be about 1,500 points, Orcs versus Space Marines, but you're running a pretty impressive list, a very elite-centric, mech-centric. I'm going to try to kill the lion for the first time because you're running Dark Angels with the lion at the head with a bunch of dreadnoughts and knight armigers. Am I correct on that?
That is correct. I'll be running 2 armiger warglaves. So the ones with the giant chainsaws and
well, you're going to need them because I'm going to come after you in melee. So I'm going to be running.
You try.
I'm going to be running my Gaz kill tank configuration. I do have a couple extra rocket launchers in my arsenal at this point as well. So
smart.
Hoping I can score some hits on some of your guys, because if not, I'm just going to have to get real lucky with my rolls, my AP, and be very careful about when I take my first wah. So it's going to be interesting. I have not had super great luck with playing my last couple of games of Warhammer, so I'm really hoping to come out of this one with a win.
Yeah, for context, my list is so elite. I am running single digits of units. I think I'm only running 7 units, i.e. 7 models on the table.
I'm probably going to have closer to 50 models on the table.
Yeah, so. Which you do expect that my guys are going to get a higher kill count because they're all dreadnoughts or armigers.
Yeah, it's going to be wild.
Or a Primarch. It's going to be a lot of fun. I am not running a Dark Angels detachment. I am running the whatever Gladius Task Force or whatever, so I will have my doctrines available to me. So I'm looking forward to that. I think being able to fall back and charge is going to be really, really helpful.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. Before we get into the balanced data slate here, guys, we do want to say make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe if you guys are watching on YouTube. Make sure to follow us on all the different podcast platforms, Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast. Big thanks to our top patrons, Mike and Isaac. You guys are the thing literally keeping us alive right now. I'm really sorry about Theo. He is like in the corner of my screen right now, and I don't know if this will make the final cut because some of that gets cut off, but he is complaining because he can hear me talking to other individuals. So I do apologize about that. But again, thank you to our patrons. For just $5 a month, you guys can support us here at Talk About Tatooine so we can do more awesome things like giveaways, game servers, and higher quality content. With that, let's get right into it. We are talking about the data slate, the most recent one, which came out this September, correct? Came out only a few days ago.
Yep, it came out on the 7th.
So let's start going over this. We have some pretty big changes with this. So a few different rules costs. I'm really excited to. You've got graphs on graphs. I'm so excited, man.
I did not make those graphs. I screen grabbed them from another I screen grabbed them from a website.
Dang, I was like, no way. I was like, dude, you did work. Holy cow.
Oh
Okay,
yeah,
so
no.
yeah, that's stinks. I'm gonna actually enlarge that a little bit because I am blind, so I'm gonna make sure I can actually see that. So,
Ooh, it got bigger on my screen.
oh, nice. Thank you to the cloud. So, as you guys know, I run orcs, and orcs are like very strongly middle of the pack currently. So that's fun. So I'm hoping the orcs get a little bit of love in this next upcoming data slate change. But we'll talk about that here just a little bit as well. I love some of these changes. Some of these are just like, okay, awesome. Like
Yeah.
really, really good.
So one of the couple or a couple of things we want to talk about right away is the change to devastating wounds. So devastating wounds, instead of dealing mortals now, it is going to make it so your opponent can't make throwing saves. So that is not going to affect one damaged weapons all that much because you're not going to waste any of that damage. But for multi damage weapons that have a damage characteristic of 2 or higher, this is going to affect them because this means that more of your wounds are going to be potentially wasted with overkill and things like that. Whereas when it was dished out in mortals,
every wound gets dealt.
Every wound gets dealt unless you kill the squad you were shooting at, which in that case it's a win-win.
Yeah, for sure.
So that has changed. Another thing that has changed is firing Overwatch. So 2 things have changed with that. You now have to have line of sight when you do Overwatch, which seems kind of obvious.
It seems like a no duh statement. Very much like, yeah, of course you need to be able to see something to shoot it. So I get that.
So, but this means that units with the indirect fire rule can no longer Overwatch unless they have line of sight. So that is your artillery, some certain missile platforms, and probably most critically is the Space Marine Desolation Squad.
Oh yeah, I think one of the most. Yeah, go ahead.
Because in the meta, people were running 30 Desolation Marines, and they would Overwatch with that. That's 3 clumps of 10, and they were dominating the meta. Slight spoiler, they are not going to be dominating the meta nearly as much moving forward.
Yikers. I am not a fan of necessarily one of the restrictions that they made because you can no longer use Overwatch on Titanic models. My kill tank is Titanic, which sucks, and orcs can't hit anything anyway. So like only being able to hit on a 6 is like, hey, that's actually not too much of a nerf from like our already like garbage shooting statistic. So that makes me really sad that they're like, yeah, dude, you can't use that kill tank to blast something off the table when it's not your turn. So I'm a little bummed about that, but I do understand because of something like I don't know, let's say Warhound Titan is on the field. I don't know if you would play a normal game of 40k with a Warhound Titan, but even some really big items, they're not necessarily the things you want overwatching. It seems a little bit overpowered.
Yeah, this affects factions such as Eldar, Chaos Knights, and Imperial Knights particularly. The Eldar have a lot of like tall walker type units that do have the Titanic keyword. I want to say they're like Wraith Blades or something. They're Wraith something. All of the Eldari look the same and sound the same and have names that are basically the same. This definitely affects Imperial Knights the most because they were the highest. Well, other than the Eldari, they were the highest ranked units or faction on our list, and with the majority of their faction having the Titanic keyword, it sucks to basically just lose your entire ability to Overwatch unless it's with a Armiger Helverin, which can do some fine Overwatching, but it's not the same as your Dominus class knight absolutely unloading, their harpoon on something.
Yeah, to hit with those big weapons, especially if you're like fielding Canis Rex or something like that,
Yeah.
and or a Knight Tyrant, you're like, hey, I really want to Overwatch with this. It's got the best guns, and they're like, no, you can't do that anymore. So that is a little bit of a bummer, but
Mhm.
I feel like that is going to level the playing field as far as killability.
And then one other thing we wanted to note, there are other changes that we don't really need to go over. I don't think they're that notable, but this one is if you have abilities that affect command point costs, which, doing research for our next episode, which is our 40k leader showdown, we're mathematically comparing all of the leaders in 40k and the supreme commanders for each faction, and we're going to tell you which ones we think are the best and which ones are not. That's been a long time making. We've been researching that one for a really long time to make sure we get all the math correct. There are a ton of leaders that can affect CP costs of your enemy using stratagems. Well, with this new rule, you can only affect a stratagem and make it more expensive if you have a unit that does that, if it affects a battle tactic stratagem. So epic deeds don't get touched, strategic ploys don't get touched.
I'm looking through, and I really enjoy how you've got us set up for this, and we'll go into this here in just a second. We're going to be answering 5 questions about basically the meta in general with Warhammer right now, and these are going to be. I really like you thinking through these questions. I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. I was doing a little bit of reading, and orcs look untouched, and that makes me sad, but we'll talk about that in our questions later, so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. What do you say? We jump right into these?
Sure, let's do it.
Let's do this. So if we are looking at the current meta, we're looking at the overall like top win rate teams. Andrew, go ahead and hit us with those.
Yeah. So first one we're going to start with is we're going to tell you where the meta was before this balanced data slate. To be fair, we don't have the data to say where the meta is at now with these changes. Personally, I don't think it's going to change a lot, but here are the top teams. I think I have Eldar or Eldari by their actual name. I always grew up calling them the Eldar. Eldar are number one by a lot. They're at around a 65 or a 67% win rate in tournaments, which is insane.
That's so good.
The goal for Games Workshop is to have a team be at 50%. To just say, this team is going to be at 50%. And so it's really going to come down to the skill of the operator to lead their faction to victory. So number one is at Eldari by a significant margin. Leading up the pack from there is the Genestealer cults at 62%, still very, very high. After that, we see the Adeptus Custodes and Deathwatch at around 54%, as well as Thousand Sons at 54%. And then Imperial Knights are also they're about at 53%. If I'm reading that graph correctly, I may not be. It's so small.
Yeah, and we're looking at some small numbers, but you're looking at a team that, like, if you're, I will say I don't mind it if a team is 3% above. So, for example, Necrons are set at 53. We play against a Necron player, and let me tell you, he is a tactical genius and knows his army inside and out. And so, like, when he gets put against a scrub like me, like that 53 feels more like a 93. But like overall in tournaments, like I'm okay if there's a little bit of a range. Like if there's plus or minus like 3 to 4% on that standard deviation, I'm totally okay with that. But you can't have teams rocking a 62 to 65% win rate, because that's 2/3 of every game. They're like, cool, instead of winning half of my games, because that's really where it comes down to like operator skill, you're like, hey, my army's actually just better than yours, and I'm going to win 2 out of 3 games. And that's just, it's too overpowered. So I'm glad that they're making some of these nerfs. So
agreed. So talking about those top teams, again, just to run through: Eldari, Genestealers, Custodes, Deathwatch, Thousand Sons, and Knights. We're going to look through the faction rules, the actual data slate changes for these, and we're going to discuss whether or not they got nerfed enough. So the first, we're just going to go in alphabetical order, which actually starts with the Adeptus Custodes. So first off, their Unwavering Sentinels stratagem. This is now an Epic Deed stratagem, which feels like a buff considering this now can't be made more expensive by your opponent.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, interesting choice on that. But the next 3 changes are all changes to the maximum unit composition that you can have. They've all been nerfed. So smaller unit compositions, what does that mean? In the shooting phase, it means basically nothing. But in the fight phase, large units has a huge implications, especially if you can fight first, because you're rolling more dice first.
Yeah, overall, there's more attacks coming in. On defense, there's more wounds to take down, and having smaller units means that they're just going to be easier to take down, which is good. Like you can't. Oh my gosh, I
you
can't
have to
even
make fewer charge rolls too. It's just so that's why unit composition does actually have power implications in the game. And additionally, if your maximum unit composition is 5, remember, if it's not a battle line unit, you can only take 3. So now your maximum for that specific unit is 15 instead of 30.
That's crazy.
So yeah, there's huge implications for these smaller squad sizes. So the Custodian Guard, these guys have been moved from they have to be between 4 and 5 custodian guards. I think they have like a sergeant too. So it's still the one sergeant. The custodian wardens, these are also between 4 and 5. And then the Virtus Praetors, I think those are like their jet bike homies, I think. I'm not really sure. They all sound the same.
You're like, they're all similar.
They all sound the same.
They all look like Henry Cavill.
You can only take 2 to 3 of these, which is a standard, fast attack type squad. I think that is going to that's going to really put the Adeptus Custodes not even necessarily in a negative spot, but just a spot that's a little bit more fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is an elite army. They shouldn't really be running big squads of anything like that. That feels overpowered.
I completely agree. They're a very elite army in their lore. A lot of the Adeptus Custodes kind of feel like more of like lone operative types. So having these massive blobs of golden boys does feel not accurate as far as like, what does the lore say? What do you see on the tabletop? Because 10 custodian guard, compare that with like, I don't know, 10 guardsmen and tell me if seems excessive. So I think Adeptus Custodes, I think they're going to get knocked down a couple notches. However, I don't think they're going to go below the 50 mark at all. I think they're still going to be very good because they're hard countering melee aggressive armies.
I watched a video on Play on Tabletop the other day of Custodes fighting Thousand Suns, and a bunch of Custodes killed Magnus in combat in one turn. And I was like,
I saw that.
Oh no, like that's really bad. So that was pretty brutal. That was pretty hard to watch. And I was like, yikes, guys, yikes. You shouldn't be able to take down Magnus with a few golden boys. I don't know. I was like, that felt like a lot.
And Magnus is one of the best. He's probably the best Primarch in the game right now, which makes him probably one of the best units in the game right now. So being able to one turn kill him
felt bad.
It feels wrong.
Feel bad moment. 100%.
You don't want. They Lehman Rust his ass. We're going to scroll down to Eldari unless you have any other notes about the Custodes. I want to keep us moving because we've now talked about one of the 12 teams that we want to address. Let's talk about the Eldari. So they have been known in the meta as the number one spot because they get to move, shoot, move. I believe that's what the Phantasm stratagem does. Moving forward, the Phantasm stratagem only can target Eldari infantry. That's a perfect nerf. That's perfect. You still get it. They didn't just hard remove it and just be like, you know what, you don't get this, or we're just going to change it entirely. Because before, you could move, shoot, move with things like your fire prisms and your avatar of Cain. Ugh, no, that's wrong.
Yeah.
That feels wrong. So this is a much needed nerf. Remember, they are in the top percent by a margin of 5% higher than the next person. They're at 67%, a clean 2/3 win rate.
Yeah,
So
that's crazy.
So I think this is a step in the right direction. Is this going to put them below the 50% mark? No, but it's definitely going to put them closer.
Yeah, they did get a lot of points updates as well. Like if you open up the field manual, like half of their units are colored in red now, and so red are changes to the units. And so I'm assuming that a lot of these models got points nerfs as well.
And I'm going to assume that those are point nerfs.
Yes.
Let's see, doing a quick scan, because I have the one version 1.0, which was the version released with Leviathan, and the version that just got released a couple days ago. It is almost exclusively point nerfs. I don't think there's a single buff on this list, just giving it a cursory nod. So, this is going to knock them down a peg. And this is going to be your reminder, guys, when we talk about the meta. Please don't chase the meta, because Games Workshop will change it.
They will. I think the best way to approach Warhammer is, I think, first of all, play an army that you really want to play. Like,
Agreed.
Pick something, because a lot of the enjoyment of the hobby also comes from like immersing yourself in the lore, doing your paint work, things like that, and like kind of coming up with like backstories. Like you can have a lot of imagination with this. If the only thing you're ever doing is like, oh, well, I got to buy models for the best meta team, you might not be having as much fun. Like I really like refining my orcs team, even though I lose with them most of the time. Like I like, looking at different models and the data sheets and like getting these guys painted up. Like, if I had to paint a new army every time a new balanced data slate was removed, first of all, I think I'd be homeless from the money cost alone. And that would just drive me nuts. I would have the biggest pile of shame in the world. And then I feel like I wouldn't be getting anything done. Personally, I feel like that would take away from the hobby rather than add to it. But that's my 2 cents, if you will.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm totally right there with you. While you were saying that, I finished skimming the actual point amounts for the Eldar, and their Wraith Knight went from 370 points, which is a good amount for such a large unit, to 510.
That's a big change. Oh, that's like an entire combat patrol. You're like, hey, you get one.
You get one.
Oh, that's crazy.
So, for that particular unit, yeah, I hope again, don't chase the meta. Don't be like, I'm going to buy 3 Wraith Knights, because 3 Wraith Knights at 370 is not that bad. You're looking at a little over 1,000 points. So in an onslaught game, that's half your team, and then you can have a lot of battle line and a couple supports. But your Wraith Knights are going to do the majority of the work. Well, now not so much. You're looking at 1,530 points.
Yeah, this is pretty wild. Looking at this, if I had the time and I wasn't studying so much, I would have loved to do an average points comparison between the entire army and just see what the overall points change was overall. That
would be a lot of data entry.
It would be, but I feel like it would give you a really solid, like, basic data point and say, hey, overall, the models increased by this much. And so you could kind of get a sense of whether or not the entire army got nerfed, or if it was just a specific rebalancing of a couple of units.
Next army on our list, we're going to talk about Deathwatch.
Deathwatch.
So not really a significant change for Deathwatch. So what we see is, for their stratagems, they use like different specialized ammo that either do, give different abilities. For example, the Dragonfire rounds, it gives that unit assault and ignores cover abilities. Hellfire rounds give you anti-infantry and anti-monster, except for it doesn't work with devastating wound weapons, which totally makes sense. And then Kraken rounds increase your armor penetration and improve your range, which is cool. We usually don't see a lot of stratagems that make you be able to shoot farther, so that's really cool. And the change here is that you can only choose units that use bolt weapons, which totally makes sense.
And they did provide on this balanced data sheet a list of different bolt weapons. There's so many of them. There's like 20 different weapons on this list. I'm like, oh my gosh. So basically, if it says bolt in the name, you can have a fair assumption that it's classified as a bolt weapon. However,
Correct.
There's a few different things in there. Like at the very bottom, there's the Vigil Spear. That's also a bolt weapon. The Long Vigil ranged weapon is another one as well. And I think the Hellfire Extremis, also a bolt weapon. I'm trying to see what else is in there that doesn't have
combi weapon.
Combi weapon. Yeah, you're right. So it's good that they have this, which is extensive, but also I'm like, guys, I don't think you needed to make this many bolt weapons. That feels like a lot.
Well, I think they would disagree.
Never enough bolter.
Yeah, there's a lot of them, and it's a little excessive. So not too much of a change for Death Watch. They're barely above that kind of 53% that I think Games Workshop is shooting for. So that totally makes sense. There's going to be a few items in their data slate or in their index that are going to get affected by this. So this might neatly slot them down maybe 1% or 2%, but not anything huge. So Death Watch veterans are 10 points more expensive. Proteus Kill Team is 30 points more expensive, or 15 and 30 respectively if you take the half of the full team.
You bet.
Spectrus Kill Team is 5 or 10 points more, and the Veteran Bike Squad is cheaper by 5 points.
Okay, so they're experiencing a probably like a moderate point nerf then, because Death Watch does not have a huge selection of units. This is probably one of the smallest selections we have for an entire army.
I think you can take regular Space Marine units.
Okay, well. That would make sense. Make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, usually the individual chapters don't have a lot of options. Some of them don't even have their own index yet. Like Dark. So I think the only ones are Dark Angels, Death Watch, Blood Angels. Not Ultramarines. Ultramarines are just like considered the generic vanilla Space Marines. Who else am I missing? Probably someone. But like Raven Guard, White Scars, and Imperial Fists, they don't have an index.
Yeah.
Space Wolves have their own index, yeah.
Oh, they do, yeah.
Thank you. So not anything too crazy. Let's look at Genestealers.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry. Genestealers.
Thousand Sons didn't have any changes rules-wise to their faction. We can give them a quick look for points value, but we'll get to that in a sec.
Yeah.
Do you want to read us the change for the Genestealer cult?
Yes, I do. So Genestealer cults are going to have a change in their cult ambush army rule. So big red text that we're going to see is going to be, so if your army faction is Genestealer cults, each time a unit with this ability is destroyed, roll 1d6, adding 1 to the result if it is a battle line unit. And this extra part, or this next part that I'm going to read, is in red, so this is a change. And adding 1 to the result if it is the first or second battle round. On a 5-up, add a new unit to your army, identical to the destroyed ones, and Cult Ambush at its starting strength, and all of its wounds remaining, blah, 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 blah. And you place a marker down on the board where that can be. So
yeah, it's a regeneration type ability. So things like that are really strong. So we're not super surprised that,
being able to regenerate units is really nice.
And to clarify, it used to be on a 4-up, add a new unit to your army identical to the destroyed unit. So a 50% shot to get a full unit is pretty good.
That's pretty stinking good. We do have a change to the Adelan Jackals datasheet as well. You're going to see each time you use the Cult Ambush ability to start this unit back on the battlefield, in addition to the normal rules, all of its models must be set up within a holy and the red text of 9 inches of the battlefield edge, or at least one of the models touching one of your Cult Ambush markers. Do you know what that was previously?
Nope, but I can look it up. Adelan Jackals. Okay, Outrider gangs. It used to be 6 inches of a battlefield edge.
Oh. All right. So they get a little bit more maneuverability there.
A 9-inch border around the table is a lot of space.
It is. You can do a lot with 9 inches. Anyways, we can look at their... Okay, Genestealer cults. There we go. We can look at their points as well. I think the points is where I'm going to see really like the biggest thing, because you can make small changes to their rules, but I'm more concerned. I'm like, hey, how many units are they going to be able to field? So, and bummer part is I think I have the old field manual downloaded on, I want to say either a USB or my other computer, because of course I was like, oh, I'll just have these up next to each other. And now I'm like, crap, I can't find the old one.
I'll save you the trouble. Approximately half of the units on the Genestealer cult and the Munitorum field manual are highlighted in red, and they all have point increases.
Oof.
It's usually by 5 or 10 points at the most, but that's not nothing.
That's not nothing. And 5 points is usually the like smallest change you can make. So
it is.
Games Workshop is making an effort to have these small changes, because the nice thing is like, because they roll these out every couple months or so, or whatever it ends up being, is that if they're like, hey, a 5-point increase wasn't enough, they can just do another 5-point increase. So I'm a fan. I'm a fan of these. If a team is dominating this much, like straight up, you're like, yeah, you can't field as many units. Like, you need to be easier to blow off the table. So like,
agreed.
Totally get it.
Honestly, with the point changes to the Genestealer cults, we're going to see them drop below the 60% mark for sure. Maybe even down to the mid 50s.
Yeah. Good. So I mean, that's where they need to be. Like, you can't be that high. So
last one we're going to talk about is the Imperial Knights. This is the last team we're going to talk about. That's at the top of their game. We already talked a little bit that they got nerfed now that they can't Overwatch with their big boys. That's a big hit, because if you were able to Overwatch with your Thunder Fire Harpoon or whatever, it's a strength 24 weapon. So if you hit with that thing, even if it's only a 16% chance, if you hit during that thing during your opponent's turn, that is going to change the tide of battle, because it does so much damage. Because if this thing hits, it's going to almost automatically kill some of your biggest firepower. There are few things that are going to have a toughness higher than 24.
Yeah, it's, gosh, that's just a disgusting amount of toughness.
Yeah.
Yikers.
So one of the things we see for the Imperial Knights, it's a pretty significant nerf for their bondsman abilities before it. I'll summarize it a little bit instead of just reading it for you. So what would happen is your Questoris Knights can basically have a buddy armiger next to them, and they had an ability to where if they did have a buddy next to them, the buddy got an ability and the Questoris got the ability. Now, only the armiger gets the ability.
You can't chain things together anymore?
Yeah, you can't, chain things together and tell one of your guys like Canis Rex being like, actually he doesn't have a bondsman ability, I don't think, but still, like your Knight Wardens, your Knight Errants, they're not gonna have those bondsman abilities. And for an army that has a relatively small index, hurts a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Their Thunder Stomp stratagem also got changed to an epic deed, even though it sounds like a battle tactic or a strategic ploy. But whatever. I don't even really understand why well, I do understand why they have different kinds of stratagems, so you can't always affect everything. One thing I will note to kind of go back to the whole changing CP amounts on stratagems, this gives a huge advantage to players who know the rules and are familiar with the armies that they're going to face. So, which stinks if you're facing an army that has a codex out now, because the only way you're going to read that codex is either A, stealing it online, or buying one, right? So,
Yeah.
like, if I'm going to go up against a Tyranid player and I don't understand which one of their stratagems are strategic ploys or epic deeds or the battlefield tactics or whatever, I'm going to have a harder time picking which ones are worth my time to make more expensive for my opponent. Either that, or you're going to slow down the rate of play by asking, hey, what type of stratagem is that? They're going to have to look it up if they don't know it off the top of their head. Or if neither of you have a codex on you, they could just lie. It's an opportunity for them to cheat. And I'm not saying people are going to do that. It's not going to be rampant, but it's going to happen.
Yeah. I hope not.
And yeah, I hope not. It definitely gives advantage to players who do know the rules better than maybe less experienced players or younger players. I'm not a huge fan of that. I think they should have kept that one the same. They probably have good reasons for doing it, but we'll see if the benefits outweigh the disadvantages.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. We are going to move on to the worst teams on the list. So they are so far down the list. Remember, Eldar is at the top of the list at 67. All the way at the bottom is the Leagues of Votann. And if I'm reading this right, I'm kind of guesstimating they're at like a 30% win rate.
And that's because when they came out, they were top of the game, right?
Yep.
And then they
good.
They got nerfed into oblivion. Like them and Death Guard, like, sorry guys, like, yeesh. Not good.
Yeah. Because from the bottom up, it's Leagues of Votann, Death Guard, Grey Knights, Drukhari, Space Wolves, and then Tau Empire. I think I said Space Marines in my notes, but it is Space
Wolves. Gotcha.
So we're yeesh. Okay, so but the Leagues of Votann did get a bonus to the amount of judgment tokens, or sorry, the amount of units that they can target with Eyes of the Ancestors. So if it's an incursion, I think they get 2 units that can deal out judgment tokens, if I'm remembering the ability correctly. In a strike force, they get 4 units. In an onslaught, they get 6 units.
Correct.
Either way, they're going to be dealing out more judgment tokens. And judgment tokens are essentially game-long Oaths of Moment. I think it's +1 to hit and wound. Well, Oaths of Moment is re-rolling, so it's not quite the same. But it's going to make those things easier to kill. Additionally, we are probably going to see between a 10 and 15% increase in the win rate of Leagues of Votann after this update.
Well, they should. They're so far below 50. Like,
they're so far below 50.
For the viewers who can't see the graph that we're looking at, it should be noted that the only teams that are right on 50% as of like the graph and tool that we were using was Chaos Demons and Tyranids. And then you have over a dozen factions all below that 57 or that 50% mark, excuse me, and not nearly as many above, but there's so many sweeping teams that have so much of the overall percentage above 50% that you get teams like Leagues of Votann and Death Guard that just get shafted. Like, they're like, hey, if you played this in a tournament, you lost. Like, unless Death Guard and Leagues of Votann were playing against each other, then yeah, you weren't winning. So
yeah,
because if you look at the Eldar and Genestealer cults, even like all the way up to Adeptus Custodes, and you compare that 1-to-1 to Leagues of Votann and Death Guard, you're looking at a 2-fold increase in your percentage chance of winning. And that's just like, that's not fair. That's not fair. So good for Leagues of Votann. They're coming back up. I was really sad that they originally got nerfed super hard because I wanted to play this team. And then I was like, hey, I don't actually want to play a team if they're at the bottom of the list. Like that comment I said earlier about play a team that's fun, I'm like, that applies, except if it's at the bottom of the barrel. I'm like, yeah,
Because that's not as fun anymore.
Yeah, knowing that I'm going to lose, not even because I'm a good strategist, just because you're
Yeah.
playing the worst army, doesn't feel good. And that's not necessarily something people are likely to also spend their money on. So GW as a business does have a financial vested interest in making these teams and these other factions good.
Especially for a brand new faction. They weren't here before 9th edition. 9th edition, they just popped out of whatever asteroid they were living on, and they were like, okay, here we go. They used to be in the game kind of back in the day, in more of the old Hammer days. They were the squats, but now we really see them as really what they should be. They're gorgeous models. They have some of the best shooting since the Tau, except they can also do melee, which is cool.
I know, I love their mass hammers. I think those are just the coolest things. And yeah, I'm excited for them to get a glow up. I know are you okay with moving on to Death Guard?
Yeah, go for it.
I know for you, you're probably pretty excited about Death Guard getting a buff because
Yes.
are you wearing your Nurgle sweatshirt? Are you wearing your Bless You shirt? Dude, you got to represent, man. What are you doing?
My dog fell asleep on it and I needed to wash it.
He's like, this is mine now. I'd be blessed.
Right now.
I'd be blessed
He
by
didn't
the Papa.
he didn't just like take a nap on it. I had left it on the floor because I'm a slob, and he spent the entire night on it. So I picked it up and it was so hot. I was like, it stinks.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I feel that. If we're looking over at the Death Guard improvements, so you might have to help me fill this in a little bit, but I'm not seeing a lot of red text. Does that mean the spread the sickness detachment rule? Is this like a brand new rule for them? Or how is that working?
Yeah, one sec. I want to get this right, so I'm downloading their index. Let's see. During the declare battle formation, select one of the sicknesses below until the end of the battle. All units from your army with the Nurgle's Gift ability gain the selected sickness. So this is in addition to Nurgle's Gifts, right? So Nurgle's Gift, Nurgle's Gift, what it does is when an enemy unit is within contagion range of that unit, which that range gets bigger every battle round, they are subtract one from their toughness. Well, yeah, they just subtract one from toughness. They make things easier to kill. But now what you're going to do is you get to pick a sickness and say, okay, now in addition to -1 toughness, you're going to be, your units are going to have a harder time hitting in melee and ranged with the Skull Squirm Blight. Or if you do the Rattle Joint Ague, I've never seen that word before.
I know, it's a new one for me too.
They make worse saves, -1 to their saving throw, or the Scabrous Soul Rot, which worsens their leadership and OC by 1 to a minimum of 1. So it's not like it's just like auto battle shocked.
Can't be 0 for sure.
Yeah. That's good. That's good for them.
Yeah.
With the Death Guard losing their old ability, gosh, what was it called?
Disgustingly resilient.
Yeah, disgustingly resilient. Like they don't really have that anymore. They lost a lot of their power, and specifically, like Mortarion is probably the worst Primarch. He got did dirty. Mortarion could kill anything, and now he can just not do very well. But he's also a little bit of a better value now that his point values were decreased. So you're not spending a massive amount of points on someone who's not really going to do all that much for you.
Yeah, especially if you're doing Primarch v Primarch, like you want a points value that's associated with how good they are.
Yeah, agreed. And they're just not good. I have a lot of thoughts on Mortarion. We're actually going to go over that in the next episode, the Leader Showdown, because that's a better venue for some of the negative thoughts I have. Let's talk about Grey Knights. They got to change.
Grey Knights.
A very, very, very tiny buff.
Change to strategic ploy stratagem. Halod and Soulfire stratagem is now a strategic ploy. That's your change. That's it. Well, I'm assuming they probably got points changes as well. So
They probably did. And because
Grey
it's
Knights.
not
Yes, everything is in red. Almost everything.
I don't know if it was a battle tactic before, but it's definitely not now, which means you can't modify its CB cost, which is good. That's typically a good thing when the enemy is not screwing with your stratagems.
Yeah, and it looks like all of their units are getting mostly a point decrease, so they're going to be a little bit easier to field.
Oh my gosh, almost their entire roster is in red.
The Storm Raven, Stormhawk, and Storm Talon and Venerable Dreadnought are the only ones that didn't get changed. And then their Forge World point values are still the same as well. So Land Raider Banisher and Grey Knight's Thunderhawk gunship are both the same. Oh my gosh, so Thunderhawk gunship is 800 points. Wow.
It's huge, yeah.
It's
one of the largest Space Marine models you can buy.
It's probably like $400. It's probably so expensive.
It's big. But I mean, a lot of like their characters and stuff are being bumped down to less than 100 points. Less than 100 points for a character is really good. Their Brotherhood Tech Marine is down to 60 points. Their Grand Master is 95 points. So their best non-vehicle character is less than 100 points. That's good. That's pretty good.
That is really good. And you've got the Grand Master and Nemesis Dread Knight at only 200 points. I don't know about you, but if I'm fielding a mechanical leader for only 200 points, I'm probably going to feel pretty good about it.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. And their regular Nemesis Dread Knight is now below 200 points, which before it was 215. Now it's 185. I mean, a 30-point swing, that is significant.
That is
absolutely significant. Because, I mean, you're looking at, if you're seeing 30-point swings on some of your guys, so let's look at the Interceptor squad. Before, it was 320. Now, it's 270 for a squad of 10. That's a 50-point change. So between those two, you now have room for another unit. Like, we're not talking just like, a couple points here and there. We're talking such significant changes to their points that you're going to be able to field entire new units.
Good for Grey Knights. Man, that's going to be fun.
Knights. Like, just between those two units, the savings on the Dread Knight and a full Intercessor squad, you could shove in a Grey Knight's Rhino. That's good. That's awesome. Yeah, it's amazing. This is really good for this faction.
Absolutely.
Because they should be at the level of the Custodes, in my opinion. Maybe just a touch below lore-wise. But
yeah. Because they're like OP in the lore. Like Grey Knights are Space Marines on drugs, but like psychic drugs. So.
And like not a single one of them has ever fallen to chaos sort of thing. Like, that's awesome. In a universe of rampant corruption, that's pretty impressive. They're pretty cool.
I'm down with it.
Let's move on.
We've got your Drukhari coming up next. Drukhari used to be like cream of the crop a while ago. So kind of hurts that they got pushed down so far. A lot of their models are getting points decreases. So we're going to see a lot of their buffs coming from just how many units they're going to be able to play. Looks like the Archon Beastmaster, Court of the Archon, a few words that I can't pronounce, homunculi, Hellions, Incubi.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, a lot of these different ones are going to be, it looks like about 2/3 of their army is getting a point buff. So that's pretty dang cool.
Yeah, considering models like the Archon, he doesn't do a lot of damage, but he does have a 2-up invuln. Let's talk about, the Space Wolves. No rules change for the Space Wolves. A lot of red text. Let me tell you, there's a lot. I mean, this balanced data slate, I feel like they really took the kid gloves off. Games Workshop really was like, you know what? We are going to change a lot of things. They haven't really done that a lot in the past. They would see, minor point changes, but they're like, no, like this needs to be different in a lot of ways. Just glancing over its majority point decreases. There were some increases. Wolf Scouts are now more expensive they're 5 and 10 points more respectively. But characters like Arjak Rockfist, he's like a Terminator model. He's now less than 100 points. Bjorn the Fell-Handed, which is like that really cool. He's that really cool dreadnought with like the ice talons before like the Brutalis became part of, I wouldn't say regular rotation, because you still can't buy a Brutalis dreadnought in a box. You have to find it on eBay or buy Strike Force Agastus for $300. I'm not salty. You're salty.
Saltier than the seas of Fenris.
He saw a 40-point decrease. That's a lot.
Feels good, Bjorn. Feels good.
Feels pretty dang good. And I mean, I'm just kind of glancing over. Everything else is cheaper. Everything is cheaper, except the Wolf Scouts. They must have been good, I guess. There must have been some combo with, like, I think Lucas the Trickster, because he's a Scout Sergeant, I think. He's only 50 points now. Let's see. How much is Ragnar Blackmane? He's one of their... He's not their, like... He's an epic hero, but he's not, like, the epic hero. Yeah, he got a 15-point decrease. That's pretty good.
Nice.
And their chapter master, Logan Grimnar, and Logan Grimnar on Stormrider, just the model itself got a 45-point decrease. Massive. That is massive. And his Stormrider got a 55-point decrease. Remember when we said 5 or 10 points is standard? 50 is a lot.
50 is a lot. Oh, yeah.
Literally an order of magnitude.
Sheesh.
Holy smokes. Sheesh. I think that's all the teams we want. Oh, we want to talk about Tau. We want
the
to talk
Shooty
about Tau.
Boys.
They did not get any rules updates, so all we're going to see is changes in the points.
They've got some red text.
They do have some red text. What are you seeing, brother?
So I am seeing a lot of red text. So, for example, on She, Breacher Team, Broadside Battlesuits, your Cadre Fireblade, Commander Farsight, Commander in Cold Star Battlesuit, Commander in Crisis Battlesuit, Enforcer Battlesuit, Shadow Sun, just your standard Crisis Battlesuits, Dark Striders, Devilfish, Ghost Keel Battlesuit, Hammerhead Gunships. Oh, baby, is that railgun getting cheaper? Let's go. So excited.
So dumb.
About 2/3 of the units looks like they're getting a points buff. So excited. Let me see. Also, I will say Tau Empire has an absolutely hilarious amount of Forge World models, being one of the most expensive models in the game, which is the Manta. It is 2,100 points. But your Ravana battlesuit looks like got a change down to 200 points.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty freaking cool. So excited. The Taunar is still... Why wouldn't they give Taunar a buff? Come on, guys. I want to put the big boy on the field.
He's too big. Yeah, almost 800 points for a single model.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited
if somebody
about
alpha struck that. But yeah, I mean, these are sweeping changes. I mean, significant point changes again for this faction, because they're sitting at the bottom of the barrel by a significant margin. They're nowhere close to 50%.
Yeah,
I mean, they're sitting at about between 40 and 39%. It's not good. It's bad.
They're bottom of the barrel. So,
and remember with that plus or minus 3% tolerance that Games Workshop is shooting for, if this can bump them up about 7%, which with these point changes is possible, I could see Tau starting to be a little bit more competitive.
I really hope so. I want to play Tau. I mean, like
I know you do.
I'm like, I want to play them. They look like fun. I want to make a black, gold, and green Tau army. It's gonna be dope.
Let's now that we've talked about more of some of the specific changes, I know, guys, this has been a long episode. Thanks for sticking with us. Let's just real quick talk about where we think the meta is going to go after these data slate changes.
I think we're definitely going to see the Eldar and the Genestealers come out of that 60% range. I think that needs to be. I think Games Workshop needs to focus on their bookends first, because if you fix the bookends, everything else is going to normalize, ideally, quite a bit as well. So if you're taking Genestealer cults and Eldar down into the 50% range, like they could honestly drop about 10%, which is a ton. And I think that would be really, really good for the game. But same thing, like Death Guard and Leagues of Votann need to go up by at least 10% each team. So theoretically, if you balance those out, you're going to get a lot of sweeping changes and getting more and more teams closer to that 50%. So that's kind of where I think that's going to go. I think they're probably making most of the changes to the bookends, and then everything in the middle. I think as the closer to the mean that you get, I think less and less change is going to be happening.
And that's exactly what we saw. For example, factions who are in the low 40s, who still need a buff, but are not quite at that really, really low end. They're not in that third quartile or fourth quartile. Dark Angels, Blood Angels, Space Marines, Astra Militarum, a lot of Space Marine, and Adeptus Mechanicus. None of them really got significant changes. AdMech did get a few changes. We didn't cover them. You guys can check out the balanced data slate for yourself, because this has already been over an hour of recording. So
yeah, and this is like summary of everything. This is not going into details and all of those, because we both work long jobs and don't have the time to cover all of these. I will say I'm pretty excited about some of the changes that's happening to my team. So orcs, like it looks like quite a few of my people are actually getting points buffs. So for example, my mega knobs are getting a 10-point buff. So I'm super excited about that. If I'm looking at my Ludas, they're getting a 5-point buff. I've got quite a few other guys in there. So for example, I've got a Def Dread that I'm running. I think the Def Dread got dropped down by 20 points. So a lot of this is looking for me really, really nice, because now I'm going to be able to field probably an extra whole unit of something, which is funny because that means I need to buy more models. So I'm like, oh no.
Oh darn.
Yeah. Even things like the trucks, like those barely cost any points already. Oh no, those got nerfed. So that's a feel bad moment. That made sense because they went from 70 down to 50. And so they split the difference at 60 points per, and that totally makes sense. So that's going to equal out a little bit. If I look at my War Boss is getting cheaper. War Boss and Mega Armor also getting cheaper. Oof, this is going to be nice. My Ludas getting cheaper. Burnaboys getting cheaper. Oh yeah, Ludas are only 50? What? No way. That's awesome, because Ludas kind of stink. Awesome, they're getting another 5-point. Dude, I'm gonna be like good to go. I think in our next game, I'm gonna be able to field like a whole extra unit against you.
So you're gonna hate this. All of my dreadnoughts got cheaper.
What? The frick!
I'm so sorry. However,
damn it!
for our large game that's coming up, our 4-player game that's coming up, which we didn't actually talk about, but that's fine. We'll talk about it at the beginning of next episode. All of my Terminators are getting more expensive, and I have 25 of them.
That's a lot. So that's good. I mean, it'll balance out between your Terminators and your Dreadnoughts.
I don't want it to balance out. I want my army to be.
I just want more.
Just want more. But yeah, we did see a lot of point decreases across the Space Marine line. Probably some notable increases are the Infiltrators, which I do run, and the Terminators, which I also run. But units like, let's see, and the Stern Guard Veteran got more expensive too. Well, it'll be closer to 6,000 points. So yeah, it's kind of I feel like it's a wash for Space Marines, which is a little unfortunate because they do need a buff. They're not quite there.
Yeah.
But like you said, they're not part of those bookends, so they're not going to get the attention yet. And they have a codex coming out in just a few months.
So yeah, maybe some more changes along with that.
Yeah, I think there'll be pretty significant changes to the Space Marine faction coming up, including jump pack assault intercessors.
That's going to be awesome. So cool.
Excited.
You've got jetpack gear and bits and stuff, right?
I do not. Oh. They are saved in my Etsy cart, and I haven't pulled the trigger because I bought myself some models as a birthday present to myself and didn't want to spend any more.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
All right, sir. I think we have a little bit of news from the HoloNet to go over. One of our favorite mobile games that we love to play is Marvel Snap, so we just wanted to fill you guys in on some new cards. If you guys are players of Marvel Snap, you guys have probably already seen this, but we got some new cards rolled out for this month. This month is taking a Loki theme, so we're seeing cards like Alioth, Ravonna Renslayer, and Mobius all entering the field. Now, Alioth, I've already gotten to play quite a few times because I play an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. deck mostly, and that means Nick Fury has been able to spawn this card for me several times, and let me tell you, it feels good. Feels good to kill cards that haven't even revealed yet. So nice. It's a good one. I haven't been able to play with Ravonna or Mobius yet. I don't know if those are actually
released. They're not released yet.
Yeah, that makes sense. But they should be. I think Ravonna is getting released the same day as this episode is released on the 18th. So be on the lookout for that. Oh, and if you guys didn't catch our newest Marvel Snap video, not only does it have me detailing the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. deck, but it also has a bunch of new variants in there as well. So if you guys are curious about new variants you guys want to play, I have a bunch of those in there, and they are some sweet looking variants. So I do highly recommend you guys check that out as well. Andrew, anything you want to add before I take us out?
I don't think so. I think I'm good.
All right, guys. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Every single one of you is amazing and wonderful and probably a little grimdark as well. Make sure you guys leave us your theories in the comments. We'd love to see some Warhammer theories, where you guys think the universe is going, where you guys think the meta is going to go as well. Share us pictures of your models on Twitter or Instagram, or if you guys have a question you guys would like us to feature on air, shoot us an email at talkabouttatooine@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe and like this video so that the algorithmic overlords will slice this video into the feeds of other like-minded folks. And until next time, the Emperor protects.